Hey everyone, Soly the Scourge here. Today we're at the training dummies because I will be doing my mod 15 build that I'm using here. And if you're a longtime subscriber, if you followed my mod 13 builds, I didn't put one out in 14 because it's mostly gear changes, but you know that I was a big fan of actual efficiency, speed, Dark Revelry, those sorts of things. You know, if you watch speedruns of dungeons, you know, at the end game, the speedrunners always have, you know, a Guardian Fighter proccing into the fray, Scourge Warlock proccing Dark Revelry, get through it as quick as possible, get as many dungeon chests as possible. That's changed here in Mod 15. The big innovation here in Mod 15 is actual combat efficiency, staying alive. They've really been pushing this theme of, with the K-Team challenges, with the Dungeons of Old that are going to be coming, that if you die, you restart. And so actual in-combat efficiency is really important. And so with that being said, I'm going to be going full Fury. I will also say I don't really believe in switching my feats around in a dungeon. I just hate going back to campfires, remembering what build I'm on. I will switch powers, I will switch artifacts, but I don't like switching my actual feats, worrying about wasting time backtracking in the middle of a dungeon just to change a few things around. So that's also part of this build, just so you know. It's going to be a long video. I'm going to cover everything pretty extensively, a lot of kind of theory crafting. So you're going to have to follow with me here, but I think it'll be worth your while. So to start with the feats, hit points, always good. Again, staying alive, or courage. It's been toned down a lot on the Warlock. DOT ticks, bleeds, I think too, got kind of hit where they don't proc as often or do as much with Aurora Courage, but hit points are still good. Just some base criticals. And only one over here in Energizing Curse. At wills aren't going to be a big part of this build. Also, what kind of got toned down is Hellish Rebuke, which is one of your main at wills. So it's not going to be a main focus, we just have an extra point to spend here. It is going to be a heavy encounter rotation, so you do want empowered rituals. With it being a heavy encounter rotation, I do like determined casting. You might argue it doesn't do a lot, you know, 10% reduction, but for me, it's worth it. You know, positioning your pillar power in the right spot, getting it just that little bit extra early. We're also going to be using Dread Theft. I'll explain more on that later, but being able to get Dread Theft back, you know, if you get controlled, which cancels it, or if you cancel it yourself, I think those things are worth it here. And then devastating criticals. Crit severity, it's always one of those things where the more that they keep putting into the game, you start getting diminishing returns on it. I still think it's better than Blood Packet Kinea. If you are a human, you don't have to choose. You can fill 5 here, 3 here. I'm not human, I'm Metallic Dragonborn, so I put 3 here and 2 here. Just to make another point, you know, I haven't made a build since mod 13, or at least a video of it. You know, since then we've gotten this, which adds 2.5 crit severity. We've gotten new boons. You know, here's another 3% crit severity. They keep adding it into the game, so slowly as time goes on, you know, this feat does get a bit worse, but I still think it's right to put 3 out of 3 in it. Alright, here's part of the full Fury build. After a critical hit, your next hit will also deal a bit of your weapon damage. That's better than this one. I tend to make mine, again, I don't like switching feats around, I tend to make it a bit more boss focused. This one's a bit more AoE focused, it requires enemies to die. Same thing with offering the prisoner. It's actually very good if you do want to flip between AoE builds and single target builds. You know, offering the prisoner is very good in AoE, but if you're just trying to one-shot a boss, you know, you load into it and you're trying to one-shot or one-phase a boss, you don't really have time to wait for other ads to spawn in and, you know, getting a kill on them to boost this. So that's really the reason why offering the prisoner is missing. It is decent. Instead, we've got Gatekeeper's Empowerment. I am using both Gates of Hell and both Hellish Rebuke on DOT. You can make Hellish Rebuke where it doesn't do DOT and where that doesn't work, but we're taking advantage of both of these, so it's worthwhile. Hell Touched, when something hits you, you deal more damage back to it. It's just good. Party debuff here, it's good. A lot of times I'm running with another DPS because I'm doing, advanced or immediate queues for daily AD bonuses, or just I have a lot of DPS friends, so I find the debuff good. Killing Curse, again, when you're attacking a cursed target, everything will be cursed, so just bonus weapon damage percentage dealt to it. Executioner's Gift, bonus damage. Murderous Flames, this got reworked. I will say if you're trying, I have this on again because it's a little bit more boss focused with Killing Flames. It actually got worse with Killing Flames because I think it used to deal an additional 30%, but as part of the rework they did on Murderous Flames, you are going to be able to proc this off other powers, such as Hellish Rebuke now procs Murderous Flames. So Killing Flames itself got toned down from like 30% to 25%, but you also get the same ability on more powers, like I said, like Hellish Rebuke. If you're doing AoE feats, you can probably take this off and pick up Offering to the Prisoner, but I think it's fine enough in the way I'm running this build. Brutal Curse, when you put your Warlock's Curse on, which you should always be doing, additional damage, and of course Creeping Death, a big component to our DOT and the Warlock identity for a while here now. So what does this all mean? Well, for this all to come together, you really have to stick with me here for the powers, which I'm going to go over now. So this is going to be your opener. When you're walking through a dungeon, you're really fast. You're often the first one to a group of enemies. And so when that happens, I like to use Gates of Hell. And part of that is I'm sitting here waiting for the other group to show up. If I line up a Gates of Hell and I time it right, it's basically +1 free attack for me, right? Because if I'm doing this, and it's got a delayed trigger, but if I'm doing that, it's +1 attack for me, while nobody else is dealing damage, which is a positive DPS for you. In previous times, I've been using Tyrannical Curse. The problem I have with the Tyrannical Curse daily is that if you do it too soon, you pull aggro on yourself. If you do it too late, the creature's already dead, and you get no effect out of it. So again, that's why I'm on Gates of Hell. You can see what you want about the damage here. It's going to knock down enemies, which is going to be good for you. Safely engaging. Most people die running into a group of creatures before the rest of the party's there, before the buffs are there. So it helps with that. Like I said, you can see the damage numbers up there, but you're dealing damage when everybody else is still walking. So this is all just basically free damage. You get an AP gain refund, which is good for you. You're cursing enemies, which is good for you. That's why I like it. You're in combat. Your single target daily is going to be Brood of Hadar. It's really good. The really good thing about Brood of Hadar is the cast time is so quick. So I'm just going to get some AP back here. Maybe not. AP is going slow. But anyways, the really good thing about Brood of Hadar is it costs almost no time to cast, so you can basically cycle through your rotation. So let's see how long it actually takes to cast Brood of Hadar. So you're doing that and you can move, you can do whatever you want. So that's the benefit of Brood of Hadar. But again, the benefit to Gates is that you can basically sneak in that extra attack when nothing else is going on. So again, that was a lot of information just for a situational approach to a mob, but it is important if you're trying to maximize DPS. The other thing, once you basically line that up, as the other party's still running into the group, you should be cursing. You can walk, you can shadow slit while you're cursing. So now that you've got things cursed, you're going to get your Pillar of Power in. It's because it's got the buff, debuff component to it. It also is going to be cursing, because we curse on crits. Can get more into that later. But now you've had the time to throw your curses. You've had the time to get Pillar of Power on the enemies to buff yourself, debuff them. Make sure you got curses. Now you're ready for Curse Bite. which is a new thing that got tuned up. It only used to have 1 charge. Now it's got 2 charges. It's kind of taking the old Fiery Bolt slot, dealing AoE damage. And so here I'm going to bring them up side by side. Fiery Bolt, they had basically toned down. They had said it was accidentally doing more damage than it should. You can see the numbers here on Fiery Bolt, and you can see the numbers here on Curse Bite, and you might be saying, well, Fiery Bolt still looks stronger. But the thing is, you got 2 charges of Curse Bite you can pop. Using it does take a little bit getting used to. Because here I'm going to curse just these couple of things. The first, I got sound turned off too, so I apologize for that. But the first time you press it, it makes a sound, which is kind of satisfying. You know it's fired off. The second time, though, if you rapid fire it, it doesn't always make that sound. So you've got to pay attention to when it goes off, so you know when to switch to your next thing in your rotation. So the timing of it takes a little bit getting used to, I'd say, but you'll get it down eventually. The other main thing about Curse Bite is its range. You know, Fiery Bolt, yes, it's an AoE power, but it really only hits like these first three target dummies. The actual radius on the AoE isn't very long. I'm gonna try and stick a long-lasting curse on here, but look how far away I am. I'm still able to throw an at will. I'm out at will range. I'm still in Curse Bite range. It didn't have much health there, but even like this far away, even to the point where I can't even see it anymore, you can still hit Curse Bites. So that should be, again, even though one single Fiery Bolt can sometimes outdamage a Curse Bite, you get 2 Curse Bites and you're often hitting a lot more creatures with the Curse Bites. The other thing is they finally got Dread Theft right. You know, in 13, I think it was, they tried to get it right, you know, and they just didn't tune up the damage. They made it quicker, so more of your damage is up front now, and they finally got kind of the damage proc ticks to work well. So Dread Theft is just a really good spell. It is, again, a little bit annoying to use because of the tethering aspect, the aiming aspect. A lot of times when you kill whatever you're tethered to, your beam goes a little bit into free fire mode, so it is a little bit of a skill intensive thing. But it also synergizes really well here with Curse Bite, because in order to use Curse Bite properly, everything needs to be cursed. So when you think of a long hallway, like when you're doing CN, or just massive amounts of creatures being around in Spellplague, for instance, where things are popping out of the portals, you can often just do this. Or you can't dash because that'll cancel it. But basically, you just beam the entire area, right? And as you're beaming the entire area, you're cursing everything in the room, and then you're gonna Curse Bite and you're gonna kill everything, or deal at least massive amounts of damage. So that's the general rotation. As you might notice, we just only went through our dailies and our encounter powers. Killing Flames, or not Killing Flames, sorry. It's going to be said Murdering Flame. Meant to say Murderous Flames, because that's on Hellish Rebuke now. So it's actually toned way down. I was going through my old videos, and this number here on Hellish Rebuke used to be like 40,000 to 50,000, just offhand, I think. It really seems toned down. Obviously, it's got DOT components and hit-back components. But again, part of that is that you now are able to utilize it with Murderous Flames too. So I'm using it basically as a finisher in the rotation. You know, if there's only one thing left, well, that bonus damage on Murderous Flames applies. If there's a couple of things left, you know, it's going to spread out and try to kill those things evenly. In terms of at-wills, I've always believed that one should always be superior to the other in damage. You can see here Darkspiral Aurora actually has a decent amount of damage on it as well. Again, it doesn't have the DOT or the hitback, but you know, compared to some of the other things you got going on, this is a decent damage spell in its own right. And again, your second at-will should be a utility spell. because ones should almost always be superior in damage. So for you to ever want to use the other one, because they're always both available, it needs to be bringing something extra. So what Darkspell Aurora brings extra here is the AP gain. And again, here it charges up to 3 spirals. So you basically wait till you have 3 spirals and you can fire it off for a boost AP gain and a decent hit. But Hellish Rebuke is your main cleanup. So that might have been a lot to soak in, but to quickly recap, if you're at a group of enemies first, you can sneak in basically a free attack. You can sneak in free damage. You're approaching, you're going to curse things, you're going to lay down your Pillar of Power. If it's a large group, you can try to angle your curse and get even more curse, and you're going to fire your curse bites off. If it's a small group of 5, everything might get caught in your Pillar of Power, and you might be able to curse bites right away. And then whatever's left, you're just looking to clean up, with your at-wills and fill in your rotation. You can fit in your artifact, you can fit in your mount power as you're going. A wheel's good on an approach. It's part of your curse wheel, and then go ham. You're not always going to have those things available because, they're minute cooldowns, but, those things are pretty easy to weave into rotation. I don't think you guys need that much of an explanation of those things. The one thing I didn't cover yet in terms of powers is, what is it? The actual class features. So let's scroll up. I've got Flames of Empowerment on. It's not the greatest. This is more of a boss fight concession, where your rotation's going to circle around more. Again, when you're using an at-will as a finisher, this isn't doing as much. Sometimes your beam does get canceled and you weave more at-wills in there than other times, but the alternatives aren't that good. I know a lot of people like, what is it? Some people like No Pity, No Mercy, and putting their Hellish Rebuke as a higher damage spell, but again, it's toned down here, so I don't think this is worth doing. I just prefer Flames of Empowerment. The other one, which is important, is All-Consuming Curse, and that's because it just helps make sure everything is cursed. For curse bites, it's important to have 100% crit chance, because that's how you make sure everything gets cursed. But those are the class features I'm using. So with that said, I'm going to switch over the gear. Now, I don't have perfect gear. I'm kind of doing this video early because so many people asked for my thoughts. And, like I said, I felt that I hadn't put something out since Mod 13. So you're going to have to bear with me here on the gear. But right now I am currently using the Decaying Habit. This is an endgame thing. With gear, I realize not a lot of people, or I guess not everybody's 18.4K like I am now. A lot of people are building their characters up still. So this is an endgame thing where all I want is power, because all my other offensive stats are basically capped. A ton of equip power, which stacks. This is more a one-shotting thing. It's not the greatest, especially if boss fights are taking long because of cutscenes, which really start making this where it starts taking away your bonus power. So alternative helmets, one that's not available but will be soon, at least here on Xbox. Let's see if we can get over to the actual gear. Is going to be the Galleon helmet. The bonus, it's whatever, this is kind of the opposite of my helmet, right? My helmet is just a bunch of power up front, trying to one-shot things. In a longer fight, you might get that equip bonus a couple of times, twice, 10 seconds out of a minute, where it's 5% DPS increase. Is it that different than the Tiger? Not really, considering, it's 30 seconds or something for 5. For 5% up front, and a cutscene cuts into that, whenever you're fighting the boss and starting it off. So the helmet's not bad, it's not as much power, but it does have other things going for it. This is out of your range. You might be able to get the Barovian helmet from Castle Ravenloft. Again, These are more stat focused. This has a bunch of crit, but you know, more crit to me is kind of worthless. That's why I'm wearing the Helmet Ion, which is just more power. Alright, so with important helmets out of the way, Hags Regs, you should be using this. It comes from the Barovian hunts. Range powers, 3% damage increase. Teared Grips, also in the Barovian hunts. Encounter powers deal 3% more damage. I like this better than the Eye Stalker Rafts, which are ranged 3%. It's got a little bit higher stats. A lot of the powers that I was suggesting you use, some of them like Curse Bites are personal. You know, your pillar power, it's not your actual character like dealing damage, it's the pillar. The Curse Bite, it's like the curse dealing the damage, not necessarily your character. So because of there are some weird interactions, you kind of stick with this 3% encounter power. Weapon set. I do have the new Stronghold weapon set that I crafted myself. It is a significant damage increase, but it is at a significant cost as well. I don't even have a +1. I just got, I crafted mine. My ones that I crafted happened to be basic ones, and I exalted them. You know, that's good enough for me. But you really got to ask yourself before you start paying, you know, 2-3 million for a basic set, you know, like 6-7 million for a +1 set. Is it worth it? Are you going to earn that money back? Because at the end of the day, you know, using this over the primal set, even if it's really good, maybe it only saves me a minute, maybe it saves me a couple of minutes every dungeon run. Are those couple of minutes, you know, that I save actually going to translate into millions and millions of AD, you know, before this weapon set gets outdated? Probably not. So depending on where you are at building your character, you really got to ask yourself that. Because let me show you here. I've got plenty of weapon sets that I spent a lot of time and money on that are doing nothing for me, right? This Far Touch Pack Blade, I also crafted myself, but I crafted it when it cost 3 Far Touched, and Far Touched sold for $500,000 each, right? You know, all the fishing I grinded out for this relic set, you know, all the fishing just for keys to grind out MSVAs over and over and over again, you know, now it just sits here and does nothing. So with these weapon sets, you really I've got Twisted hidden somewhere, I've got Elemental Fire hidden somewhere. They get outdated pretty frequently, so before you start wasting millions on them, ask yourself, okay, would my money really be better spent, you know, improving other things on my character, improving my enchantments, because while, yes, this weapon set, the Stronghold weapon set is a great spike in power, mostly off the base damage factors in a lot to your overall damage. But the thing is it's going to be a temporary spike. Eventually, the spike in power that you're paying for will go to 0 when there's a new weapon set. Whereas things like upgrading your enchantments, they will help improve your character a lower amount, but that lower amount will stick with your character, you know, over the years. With that being said, let me look here. Artifact powers, just increasing the damage on your Hellish Rebuke. Artifact powers, I always put AP gain on. All-consuming curse, another 5% crit severity. And then boots. Here's recovery. That's why I like them. It's just a good stat to have. Again, armor pen and crit aren't really what I'm looking for, so bonus recovery is not bad on the boots here. I don't believe in using those 3% Magos boots when your stamina's full. I like to dash too much. I like to move around and stay active, so those boots just aren't for me. So I use the ones from Barovia here. Artifact set. I had been in mod 13, I guess. You know, I had been against the Orcus set on Warlocks. They improved it in 14 though. In 14, they made it where both bleeds for Hunter Rangers and DOT damage ticks for Warlocks finally work better with the Orcus set. So now I do believe it's the best set to use. It's so old, the item level's low. You know, you're basically negative 300 item level. Those people using the new Stronghold artifact sets. But the set bonus still is just really good, and now that it's been fixed to actually work on a Warlock properly, the set bonus of dealing up to 20% additional damage based on the difference in hit points is just still really good for DPS here. And the cost is finally down too. Now that they've put this belt, now that they put the Shard Orcus one back into lockboxes, it's finally affordable too, so you won't feel that bad purchasing it. Rings, I have an Undead 5 here just because a lot of the dungeons you're still running Cradle, Tomb of the Nine Gods, Ravenloft all have undead bosses, so I've got a Undead Slayer plus 5 and a Shadow Stalker 5. If you're doing the older dungeons, if you're doing them on Hardcore and K-Team, you can take the Undead Slayer off, put a plus 4 because 2 plus 5s won't stack. So you can do double Shadow Stalker. I just keep the Undead Slayer on for now, since that's the dungeons I'm running and I don't have K-Team unlocked yet. Shirt and pants. So the primal paints for the shirt are still good. Increases daily power. These pants have actually become outdated, the lower primal paints. There's 2 new ones, and so I'll show you here. They've been replaced with these Shimmer Weave pants plus 1. They can be crafted yourself if you've got 70 tailoring. Both of them have an equip bonus of movement on them, but the equip stance on the Shimmer Weave pants are better. I'm just not using them yet because I'm actually waiting for the Makos pants that come out of the new skirmish. Again, I'm doing this video early. I don't have everything unlocked yet. I don't have all the gear. But there will be a new pair of pants in the Bankai skirmish that I plan on using. The actual stats on them are item level 500. They're not a great distribution, but the equip bonus is better, right? Because the 2 that I just showed you have an equip bonus of movement. The equip bonus on the new pants coming from the new skirmish is going to be 1,500 power at the start of combat. And again, at endgame, all I want is more power on my character because I have all the other stats I already need. Artifacts, I keep 2. I keep a Wheel of Elements for AoE. Again, when I'm walking, it's easy enough for me to trigger and take fire and approach. Single target bosses, I do keep a Soul Sight. I use the Soul Sight when somebody else is using a wheel. So this is an AoE versus single target type thing. Stat artifact, I've got the Shard Orcus one to complete the, artifact set. And then you just want offensive stats. So Tiamat's Orb, it has great offensive stats for an artifact. It's cheap. This should probably be a Key of Stars. The Eye does have good stats on it. But Key of Stars prices, at least on Xbox, have finally came down. Whether you want to use that. I think the new Horde of Joaquin has great artifact stats, although at the price tag it's at, it's obviously not worth it because, again, they all have basically about the same stats. It's just what distribution do you want. So this should probably be a key, but it's not just because I already have this ranked up. Let's see, what else are we going to talk about? Basic Warlock stuff, 28 Constitution. That's my role. You want to be high in Constitution because that's your damage bonus hit points. And then Charisma is your primary stat, but it's like a secondary consideration. But Charisma here, you can see crit chance, companion stat, combat advantage, damage. We're going to get into companions now. My summoned, I've got my Con Artist. Most people are running a Tiger, and I will say a Tiger is probably better. They come and go depending on the strength of rings versus the strength of necklaces. Mod 15 brought a new, not necessarily new necklace, but the Mastercraft buff made a better companion necklace for Tigers, so Tigers picked up a little bit of strength. The reason why I still got this guy is because I've had him for so long, and I did have dreams, aspirations of getting one of these way, way overpriced companions. The Sergeant Knox with the 20% debuff. Unfortunately, people bought them all up, and for the max amount of AD you can carry, I never ended up with one. So yeah, I've still got my old faithful companion with me. It should probably be a Tiger. Again, sometimes rings are better, sometimes rings are glitched. ever since the Underdark days, they said, you know, ring equip bonuses shouldn't proc on companions. With that being said, I'm pretty sure this Grave Striker +5 still does, so most people are using at least one Grave Striker +5 on their companions. You know, who knows what the mods will bring in the future, who knows how good the rings versus necklaces debate is, but most people are running a Tiger. The main thing is you want your main summon companion to be able to do bonding runestones for you, but have a debuff, right? This has a 10% debuff, Tiger has a 10% debuff. That's really what you're looking for out of your summon companion. Then I'm on the Archons. I've got a Bark Shield in. I don't think I covered that, but that helps keep this bonus up. Air Archon, also a good bonus. They would synergize. Mod 14 brought this companion. It's just one of the best ones you can actually have. The 25% combat advantage damage really does a lot for you. And your last slot should be about a 4% damage increase. This guy's kind of like a fill-in placeholder. You can boost this last slot to 5%, but it's always like a situational 5%, right? Like, he's 4% all the time. You can boost it to, you know, 5% if everyone else is using one of these Velociraptors. You've got the Batir use 5% bosses. You've got the Alpha Comp use 5% in Chult. I don't really like the Fire Archon. You've got so many other things that are increasing your damage as hit points are below 50% that I don't think having another one of these type of effects is worth it, so I stay away from the Fire Archon. But out of your last slot, you should be looking for about an average of 4%, so I just keep this guy in. Mounts. I've got the new AD generation mount insignia bonus on here. But in general, you should be using Protector's Camaraderie. When your companion attacks, you gain power and defense. Shepherd's Devotion. When you use a daily power, receive a buff. Cavalry's Warning. This is only going to work if you have a legendary mount. But when you use a mount combat power, receive a buff. Artificer's Persuasion. When you use an artifact, receive a buff. If you want, you can, if you don't need AD, if you don't need refinement points, you know, from Wanderer's Fortune, you can throw on Assassin's Covenant, which I'll bring up here for you. Doesn't actually give you any new stats, but it moves, again, your defensive stats over to power. If you're still building up your Warlock, you might be too squishy, you might actually need your defensive stats, and you might need the, you know, AD to build up your character. So at the end game, you can throw on Assassin's Covenant if you want. With that being said, actual legendary amounts, which again have a high price tag, so make sure you're happy with whatever you're paying for. I've got the old tensors. There's basically 3 varieties to combat powers. There's tensors, which is the highest self buff in the game for a combat power. Although it's kind of like -1 attack because it's so clunky to use, it actually is very time consuming. So a lot of people don't like that. You then, at the other end of the spectrum, have the T-Rex, which is a massive debuff. And then you have in the middle the Bat Swarm, which is part buff, part debuff. You know, it's like 5% or something self buff, and then the rest like 10% in debuff. So you've got the spectrum of tensors being the highest self buff, you know, a T-Rex being the highest debuff, and then the Bat Swarm in the middle. What you prefer is up to you. I've just had the tensors for so long that I didn't see a reason to switch over to anything. I will say the Bat Swarm doesn't, if you're only going to get one legendary mount, the Bat Swarm's equip power is pretty bad because it's lifesteal severity. So keep that in mind. With equip powers, I have as my second legendary mount, the Golden Lion. To me, the 4,000 power, the 4,000 stat bonuses, they just don't hold up to the test of time. I'd rather have the Radiant Weapon here, which is a 2% damage increase. You also see a lot of people go with a Flail Snail, a legendary snail, or whatever for the equip power, which is just AP gain. Again, because the 4,000 stat bonus, it just really doesn't do much for you at the end game. Here's my 4,000 recovery from the tensor that I own. But I'd rather have the 2% DPS increase off Radiant Weapon. And again, the other thing I like about the Celestial line is I actually use the equip power, or what is that? The combat power I use on my temp lock whenever I run that because the shield's useful. Alright, other things I didn't cover. I don't think I went fully into my weapon, or not my weapon, my armor enchant. I'm running a bark shield. Again, it's about combat efficiency. Before I used to be on the Soul Forge. I really like the Soul Forge. I viewed it as every time I got a Soul Forge proc, and I survived after that, it was saving me money, saving me a scroll. But now, when Soul Forge procs, if you die, it still counts as a death in these new style dungeons, at least for now. So I'm looking for something that's bringing me a little bit more upfront defense. So I switched over to that. Enchantments on your character, it's mostly stat balancing. Again, speed often is DPS. You want to be getting to mobs before other people are. So darks, in your utilities if you really want to care about that. Otherwise, you can do, the 80 refinement point suite of utility enchants. For offensive, mostly Black Ice, but I have a bunch of other stuff too, right? Because Black Ice is primarily power, and recovery, and then crit, which is a cap stat, but you only need so much crit and armor pen in your build till you hit 100%. Defensive slots I think are interesting. What I prefer to run are these Draconics. So a lot of people run all hit points, again for Aurora of Courage damage when you're running with a Paladin, getting a little bit of bonus damage. I prefer to run Draconics, which are primarily hit points, but because they're 3 stats, you get a more overall stats out of them, and you get a bit of lifesteal, a bit of defense. I find the little bit of lifesteal to be relevant for when I do switch over to Templock builds. I don't always run as a DPS. Most people ask you to run as a Templock, so I like having a little bit of lifesteal on my defensive enchants. I don't think I want to go over boons again. It's mostly a stat balancing thing, and some of the boons that I use over here at 18k, you might not use. So I think I'm gonna end it there. It's been pretty in depth. If you have any follow-up questions, let me know. But I hope all this really helps you. I hope it gives you a better understanding of the class. Thanks.